How do you create the best team in the world? First, we have to define what that looks like. In Apex Legends, that might look like winning a LAN, but that might not be enough to be considered the best team in the world. What about winning 3 LANs? I think that one is pretty undeniable. That is a new dynasty. That is one of my goals with my current team. We definitely have the potential to do that. To me, I consider this a problem to solve. Not a problem as in there is like a nuclear strike that's about to drop onto my head. It is a problem in the same vein that a quantum computational problem is. For me, whenever I think of a very big problem, like how do we become the best team in the world, I think of that as a computational problem, very similar to quantum physics. And you break that down into its smaller components, like what does the best team in the world look like? What do the results say? And what kind of inputs do you need to have to create those results? To me, that is quantum physics. However, there is a different type of problem that is, I think, more important on a day-to-day basis, and it compounds over time to help solve those larger quantum physics problems. Many people label these as habits, but I like to think of them as hygiene. I like to call them hygiene problems because if you don't do them, the negative consequences won't be apparent at first, but given a couple of days or a couple of weeks, they compound into something much worse. Let's say not brushing your teeth. If you don't brush your teeth for a day, sure, you have bad breath, but if you don't brush it for a week or two, the plaque will build up, and not only will you have bad breath, it will deteriorate the health of your teeth and your mouth and maybe your overall health. There are hygiene problems like this when forming a team and competing with a team at a very high level, especially coaching a team. Many of these habits are in the game. For example, Evan Verhulst sometimes uses his Newcastle ult a little too early or dumps it very quickly when he shouldn't, especially if we're about to rotate to another spot for a ring. So what do we do here? We simply tell him, hey, you should hold on to your Newcastle wall a little bit longer, and you should hesitate a little bit to use the ability because we need it for our next rotation. This is a hygiene problem in game. These hygiene problems are just little reminders that you are off track, and it doesn't take much energy or any energy at all to get back on track. However, I think the more insidious hygiene problems are the ones that most people don't pay attention to. Those are the interpersonal ones, person to person, and then the intrapersonal hygiene problems. How you talk to yourself, how you think about yourself. And those are kind of the intangibles that don't really have a metric. There's no easy way to measure that, except for, as a coach or as a player, you talk to the players and you try to figure out what's actually going on. For me, one of the first things I worked on as a coach with 100 Thieves when I took over as the head coach was to focus more on the hygiene issues rather than these large scaling problems, like how do we become the best team in the world, or how do we become the best team we can be right now. The reason for that is because if we don't solve these hygiene problems and get ourselves on the right track, there's no possible way for us to become the best team in the world or even close to that, right? If you don't brush your teeth every day, if you don't shower, if you don't exercise well, it makes all of your other life goals, let's say to become a millionaire, so much fucking harder, right? So hygiene problems first. What did that look like when I first joined 100 Thieves? Really, my main focus was to build an environment of trust and an environment of failure, meaning that it did not feel that punishing to bring up ideas, or it didn't feel that punishing to make a mistake. I think one of the most prevalent issues in a competitive environment is to really, really punish people for making a mistake. And punishment can help, but if you do it every single day, it becomes a bad hygiene problem. It becomes something that affects your team negatively, like picking at a scab wound over and over and over again to the point that it doesn't heal at all or it doesn't heal properly. So there are different modes of thinking. And the cool thing about hygiene problems is that it doesn't take a lot of effort to get people on the right track. So that first couple of weeks, that first month of working with 100 Thieves, at least I spent a considerable amount of time and effort outside of the game to get the boys to talk to each other and listen to each other more effectively and understand each other more effectively. I did it in different ways that I'll cover in future videos. And it seems like a waste of time on the surface, but that laid the foundation for us to have really deep synergy and trust with each other in the game. It definitely affected in-game habits. If you go back to some of my older videos, I've talked about that a little bit. But yeah, not every problem has to be quantum physics problem. Most problems are hygiene problems. As long as you are aware of it, sometimes all you have to do is smell your own breath, realize it's bad, and pick up your toothbrush.